interested in buying a Wayne Bergeron GR? It's got a slightly smaller 3 rim, very cushiony. It's the mouthpiece that Wayne does most of his work on when he does not his screaming stuff, but most of his other stuff.
Yep.
Think about it, Ethan. I'm trying to sell.
I'll spread the word.
Charlie, are you interested in
That's the person I asked.
are you interested in a GR Wayne Bergeron mouthpiece? No.
I have one too.
It ain't Lotus, man.
I have a GR too.
I meant to ask you.
It's a Wayne Bergeron
How much
classic.
for your mouth?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I got it at the graduation day because I was like, oh my god, I need to start this like and I hate it. So.
You don't want to sell that burger?
Vinny, you want to buy it?
No.
Just think about it, Charlie, if you're interested.
Okay.
They're really hard to find, so. I don't know.
It should just be kind of.
Yeah. You're my contact, so it came up with you.
Also, Oswaldo, if you're looking to buy it.
When it comes to airdrop, I'm not a grandma.
I'm gonna put them together and try to do that.
How many stores do you sell? I have 3. You selling 3?
He's the dealer.
Selling 3.
So,
All 3 that you offer. That's fine.
okay.
Frank?
You guys know?
Yeah, that's
Hi.
Eric Holman's really good. I've been playing chess.
Sale from who?
Is that the one you're not seeing?
Check it out before I send it. Check it out.
You just saw GP Series 14
Bought a sleepy song. Because I read it after kid.
I bought it. And then I never used it.
Did you get it?
Yeah, I have a lot of those.
Thank you so much.
Also, if you're in need of a Bobby Shoe Elite paperweight, you know, the Yamaha Bobby Shoe Elite. You will? Yeah. Okay.
You okay, Charlie?
Yeah, okay. Do you still need a puppy?
Charlie or Ethan asked you.
Oh.
Is that what you, like, that's one of the things we've been looking for Charlie.
Yeah, true. Nice. How much? you
Also,
sell for?
is a good use of the
Well, yeah, if your standard mouthpiece is parked 1.5, so you get 24th row. What?
Good afternoon and welcome to Studio Theater. At this time, we ask that you please silence all cell phones and any other noise-making devices. The unauthorized use of audio or video recording is strictly prohibited. Lastly, if you must leave, please do so in between pieces or during the applause. Thank you and enjoy the lecture recital. Good afternoon, and thank you for being here for my lecture recital. Today, I will be discussing how Eric Morales writes for B-flat trumpet ensemble, and more specifically, how he creates clarity, contrast,
and musical depth within a relatively limited range. Trumpets tend to exist in a very narrow tessitura, generally from about F sharp 6 or 3 to C6, depending on the player. While there are piccolo trumpets which extend the range up an octave, and bass trumpets which extend the range down an octave, these specialty instruments are not always available. Because of this, B-flat trumpet ensembles lack a true low voice. That absence can make it difficult to create balance, separation, and depth, especially when multiple parts are operating within the same register. Without careful writing, the texture can quickly become dense or unclear. So rather than solving this problem by extending the range through instruments like the piccolo trumpet and bass trumpet, Eric Morales takes a different approach. He works within the natural limitations of the B-flat trumpet itself, and instead uses compositional techniques to create variety and clarity. In this lecture, I'll focus on several of those techniques, including how he builds energy through rhythm, how he distributes musical material across the ensemble, and how he uses texture and articulation to shape what we hear. To demonstrate these ideas, I will be using examples from two of his works, Cityscapes and Infinite Ascent. One of the main ways Eric Morales creates energy in his music is through something called rhythmic layering. And what I mean by this is he builds a steady rhythmic foundation underneath the melody, usually with repeated eighth notes or simple rhythms like quarter notes. And then he places the melody on top. So instead of everybody playing the same thing or everybody being active in the same ways, he has each part in a different role. For example, in movement 1 of Cityscapes, you'll see trumpet 5 is playing a bass line with entirely eighth notes, and trumpets 2 through 4 are playing a repeated pattern, eighth note next to an eighth rest, repeated. And while this might seem simple, it actually does two important things. First, it creates space. Because of the rest, the texture doesn't feel and look as crowded as it could be. And secondly, it creates a steady pulse that supports the melody without getting in the way of it. So when trumpet 1 comes in with the melody, pick up to 5, it sits clearly on top of this rhythmic foundation. We see something similar in the third movement of Cityscapes as well. Even though it looks a little more complex, if you look at the rhythm as a whole, it is just straight eighth notes. But this time, it's split between parts. You'll see that the trumpet 5 plays in the rest of trumpets 2 through 4. Because these notes are split between different players, it doesn't feel as repetitive. It creates a more active role between ensemble members. This concept also happens in Infinite Ascent. In this example, you'll see the blue highlights represent quarter note rhythmic support that happens to be harmonized. And then there's harmonic arpeggiations that get added on top, and finally the melody joins. So again, we have this idea. One group creating a rhythmic foundation, we have some harmonic material, and then finally melodic content above it. Now, why is this important? And the answer is truly the trumpet ensemble doesn't have a true low voice. So instead of using pitches to lay a foundation, Morales uses rhythm to create the foundation. That's what's supplying the music forward motion and depth, even when everything is happening within a similar register. From a performance standpoint, this means the ensemble has to think very carefully about balance and articulation. The background parts need to stay light and consistent, while the melody stays clear and present. If everybody played with the same weight, front, and length, the whole texture would become muddy. So overall, rhythmic layering allows Morales to create clarity, forward motion, and a sense of depth without relying on extreme range. movement starts strong and then immediately drops off, and then the next player picks it up. We see this really clearly in cityscapes, especially in the first and third movement. In the first picture, you'll see that the ensemble is playing what looks like kind of long notes, but when you look at the composite rhythm, it is just straight eighth notes. Each member of the ensemble plays a forte piano on each variation of eighth note, which creates a bell-like ringing effect that gets passed throughout the ensemble. Similarly, in the second picture, it happens again, this time starting from the bottom and working its way up to the top. The same concept happens in movement 3, with passing eighth note figures starting with forte pianos. But what makes this technique work is the contribution of, or the combination of dynamics and spacing. Each note is separated, both because of the forte piano, but also because different players are actually playing them and taking turns. So the sound never gets heavy or blurred together. Instead, you hear each attack clearly, one after another. From a performance standpoint, this requires a lot of precision and listening. Every entrance has to match in articulation, timing, and style. So musically, this technique allows Morales to add a unique color to an ensemble that is made out of the same instruments and have the same timbre. The next technique we'll talk about is Morales' use of rhythmic pass-offs. You'll notice in most of these examples, this uses 16th note pass-offs from one player to the next player throughout the entire phrase. In this first example, you'll notice that this 16th note line could be played by one player, but instead, he chooses to break it up between players. This way, each part plays off of each other, creating unity within the ensemble. In movement 3, you'll see multiple examples of the same idea with 16th note runs, this time between 3 voices. You'll notice that trumpets 3 and 5 are playing longer notes in octaves, laying a foundation that is no longer rhythmic like we talked about earlier. The same concept happens again, this time with trumpet 4 and trumpet 5 providing the foundation, and trumpets 1 through 3 passing off 16 notes. Morales also uses this effect in Infinite Ascent. In movement 2 of Cityscapes, Morales passes off ideas in voices that don't have the melody. And you'll see this in trumpet 4 and trumpet 5. And if you notice, trumpet 5 starts measure 3 with a quarter note rest, while trumpet 4 starts with eighth notes, which then get passed into trumpet 5. And this could have all been written in trumpet 5. But by splitting it up the way he does, he allows for the music to pass one to the other, connecting each part as one musical idea. In Infinite Ascent, he does the same idea, this time introducing it in a triplet figure. In the first image, you'll see the triplet figure being passed from one voice to another voice, and again, it could be played by the same voice, but instead he splits it up. And then the second picture is very similar to what we saw in Cityscapes, where we have a rhythmic foundation in the bottom 3 trumpets with 16th note pass-offs above it. From a performance standpoint, this requires a lot of precision and listening. Every entrance has to match with articulation, timing, and style. Otherwise, the effect falls apart and just sounds disconnected instead of flowing. So musically, this technique allows Morales to create motion without long sustained lines in one voice and keeps the texture light and transparent, all while still working within the same limited register. Another way Eric Morales creates clarity, especially in a group where everyone sits in the same range, is through interval contrast between the melody and the accompaniment. the melody and the background parts move differently. In a lot of Morales' writing, the melody uses larger intervals like fourths and even tritones, while the accompanying parts tend to move in smaller stepwise motion, often within a minor third. So even if everything is happening in the same register, the melody naturally stands out because it has more shape and motion. You can see this very clearly in Cityscapes, Movement 1. Here you'll see in Trumpet 2 the melody starts, and the first note is actually the same note as a harmonic voice, which in theory could make it hard to hear what is important. But because the melody moves in larger leaps, the harmony is moving stepwise around it, your ear is still drawn to the correct line. So instead of relying on range, like putting the melody another octave higher or moving the harmony an octave lower, Morales uses the intervallic difference of the line to create the separation. In Infinite Ascent, we see a similar idea. This time is with added rhythmic motion in the melody that drives the ear to the melody. You'll notice that the melody is located in the same range as the harmony voices. But because of the movement in the melody with the quarter note rhythm versus the half note and whole note rhythms, your ear is drawn to it. This is especially important in trumpet ensemble because we don't have the benefit of a wide range. Everything is relatively close, so if all the parts move in the same way, it can quickly become unclear. From a performance perspective, this means players need to be aware of their role in the texture. If you're in the accompaniment, your job is to stay consistent and supportive. If you have a melody, you need to shape those larger intervals so they're really clear and intentional. So overall, this technique allows Morales to highlight the melody without changing register, keep the texture clear and transparent, and create contrast using motion instead of range. Another key way Eric Morales creates clarity in his writing is being very intentional about who is doing what at any given time. Instead of having all the trumpets play equally active parts in his music at the same time, he assigns clear roles within the ensemble. Things like melody, harmonic support, bass line, or rhythmic motor. You can see this clearly in Cityscapes Movement 1. We already talked about it, but we start with a bass line in Trumpet 5, with harmonic rhythm in Trumpets 2 through 4, and the melody in Trumpet 1. And what's really important to note is that not everyone is active in the same way at the same time. And throughout the piece, sometimes parts are assigned sustained notes, sometimes it's short rhythmic figures, and sometimes they drop out entirely. And that contrast is what keeps the texture clear. We see this in Infinite Ascent. Morales sometimes treats it's a choir, sometimes treats choir 1 as one idea and choir 2 as another idea. So here we have choir 2 or choir B, they have the melody, and then choir A has the response. And notice that anytime the melody is playing, the response has rests, and vice versa. This allows for an open texture, so nobody is overplaying another part. And this gets at an important idea. Sometimes clarity comes not from adding more sound, but from taking away sound. If too many parts are active at once, especially in the same range, it becomes difficult to hear what's important. So Morales will often thin out the texture, either by simplifying rhythms or by having certain voices drop out, so that the main idea can come through clearly. We see that in Infinite Ascent, where we have full instrumentation, every voice is being utilized, and then he drops it down to only 4 trumpets being used in the next phrase. From a performance standpoint, this means players have to be very aware of their role. You're not just playing notes, you're functioning as part of a larger texture. So you need to know, am I the melody? Am I supporting? Or am I providing rhythmic energy? controlling how many voices are active and what role each one plays, Morales is able to prevent the texture from becoming cluttered, create contrast with a limited range, and keep the musical focus clear. The final technique that we will discuss today is how Eric Morales uses what I'll call instrumentation shifts. Even though the entire ensemble is made out of B-flat trumpets, Morales creates contrast by changing which part is being played by specific parts. So instead of the same player always having the melody or the same group always being the accompaniment, these responsibilities shift throughout the entire piece. You'll see that here in Cityscapes Movement 1. The melody actually starts in Trumpet 2 and then gets passed back into Trumpet 1. The melodies also appear sometimes in lower voices, like Trumpets 4, Trumpets 3, and Trumpet 5. But each time this happens, the color of the sound changes slightly, and even though it's the same instrument, it provides variety. This also happens in infinite ascent, especially in the beginning. It starts with choir A playing a melody with some harmonies under it, and after the phrase ends, choir B comes in with the exact same melody. This time it's from a different perspective. What's important here is that the shifts are not random. They often are used to shape phrases, to build intensity, or to signify a transition into a new section. This also helps solve one of the main problems with trumpet ensemble writing. Since all the instruments have a similar timbre, it can be difficult to create contrast. So instead of changing instruments, Morales changes who is playing what, which creates a subtle but effective difference in the sound. From a performance standpoint, this means players need to be aware of when their role changes. You might move from background to melody, or melody to support, and each of these requires a different approach in tone, articulation, and projection. So overall, instrumentation allows Morales to create contrast without changing instruments, highlight important musical material, and keep the texture evolving throughout the piece. So as we've seen today, Eric Morales approaches the limitations of trumpet ensemble not as an obstacle, but as opportunities for creativity. Rather than relying on extreme range to create contrast, he builds clarity and depth through rhythm, texture, and the careful distribution of musical roles. By layering rhythmic ideas, passing material between players, and constantly shifting responsibilities within the ensemble, he creates music that feels far more expansive than the instrumentation might suggest. Just as importantly, his writing reflects a deep understanding of the performer. These techniques not only shape the musical result, but also promote endurance, ensemble awareness, and active listening, making his work as valuable pedagogically as they are musically. And ultimately, Morales shows us that effective trumpet ensemble writing is not about playing higher or playing louder, but about writing with intention, using the full potential of the ensemble to create clarity, balance, and meaningful musical expression. Now, before we transition to our performance of Cityscapes, I'd like to read the program notes. Cityscapes is a 3-movement work for 5 B-flat trumpets. Each movement gives a caricature of city life. The first part is entitled Rush Hour. It's light and somewhat comical, and it depicts the morning commute into the city. The second part is entitled Skyscrapers, and it attempts to portray the grandeur and the magnificence of the city's skyline. And the third and final part is entitled Rhythm of the City. It's a musical essay that describes how a city is always teeming with action and is never actually at rest. This final movement features an unusual percussive element that treats the trumpet as a melodic percussion instrument. We are now going to transition to Cityscapes. Thank you. You have no idea how much your work has meant to me, and I will forever appreciate it. And now for Infinite Ascent. Infinite Ascent is a trumpet octet that was commissioned by the Kansas State University Department of Music. The title Infinite Ascent was inspired by a popular children's book, The Red Balloon by Albert Lemoyne. The dreamlike story revolves around a little boy in Paris named Pascal, who discovers a brilliant red balloon on his way to school one day. The balloon comes alive for Pascal, and they develop a relationship which is much like a boy and his pet dog. Ultimately, the red balloon is destroyed by a gang of older boys. And at this point, balloons of all colors come to Pascal's aid as if to comfort him. The story ends as Pascal is swept high and away from Earth's grasp by a rather large gathering of friendly balloons. The brilliant red balloon stands out in stark contrast to the drab grays and browns of the city streets. The red balloon is a metaphor